Yeah, just like you're talking to.
Right.
Okay.
You are, right. Yeah, that works out well.
Don't hold
Yeah.
back, just be your full.
Just like we were doing out there, that's all we want.
yourself.
Okay.
We're not trying to do anything special, we just want to
Okay,
talk.
whatever you ask me, I'll do the best
Just like we were
answer.
going out there.
Okay.
So what are you thinking about as you approach your 90th birthday?
Well, I guess I can say that I didn't think I'd live this long. They all talk about 90. Well, you get there, each year, and it's just all of a sudden 90. It was sort of shocking.
Yeah.
Of course, like I told you, my mom lived to be 109.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of longevity in the family.
So where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Pendleton area, over the Rhine.
And that was a big Italian area, correct?
Yes. Well, a lot of Germans lived there too.
Yeah, they were all over.
Yeah. And a lot of my friends were a lot of them were German. Well, if they needed a dark-haired person to play something, they would get me and my girlfriend because we were the only one that had dark hair.
Where'd you go to school down there? Did you go to
St.
Mary's?
Paul.
It's all St. Paul. Okay. All right.
St. Paul.
And where'd you go to high school?
Our Lady of the Angels in St. Bernard.
And that was quite a trip back then, right?
Yes, it was. I had to take 2 buses every day, and in the winter it wasn't very good, because we had to take the buses. Nobody had cars in those days.
Yeah, and so you went to there was a public school right in the neighborhood, but
Right.
your family wanted you to
Just
go
right down the
there.
street, but I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go with my friends up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell me about your father. We were talking about him before.
Well, my daddy came over as an immigrant from Italy. He was just a young kid. He was only around 13 or 14 years old. And he came and he stayed with his sister up in Rhode Island for a little while. And then he got to be about 18 or 19, and then he got drafted for World War I. And then he went over and he got hurt very bad and got shot in his leg. And he was hurting for the rest of his life, but you would have never known it because he never complained. No, never complained.
And he was decorated, correct?
Yes, he was given a Purple Heart and a Silver Star.
What story did you know about the Silver Star?
Well, when I told you before, he belonged to the American Legion, and they always had their parades and everything, and he never had anything, never had any medals. And so his commanding said to him, well, Nick, why don't you wear I know you got the Purple Heart, you got wounded. And he said, I never did get it. So he said, you never did get your medal? He said, no, I didn't. So he said, well, I'll write to the War Department, tell them I have a man in my division out here that's never gotten a medal. So they wrote a beautiful letter back to us and said that, and enclosed his Purple Heart. He said, well, what Mr. Carpinella didn't tell you was that he got an award for the Silver Star, which is right below the Medal of Honor. Yeah. And he said, and his commander out there, he said, my God, Nick, what did you do to get the Silver Heart? He said, I know you had a heart part to get the heart. And he said, well, I don't know. He didn't want to talk about it a lot. And so we found out 2 different stories. And he told him that he had saved his lieutenant and a couple people off of the line of fire, brought them back. And then he was on the field. He got shot 2 days before the armistice.
Oh.
They had the two battles were together, and he got shot in the very last one, the Argonne Forest, or the other one I can't think of right now. But he got shot a couple days before, and he laid on the battlefield for 2 or 3 days. They treated his leg because he was bleeding, and they said, we'll be back for you, Nick. And he said, okay. So he said, we'll be back. So he just laid there, and they never did come back. And he said he crawled around to some of the dead soldiers and got their water because he needed water. And so when they finally heard horses, and he said he didn't know, he couldn't tell if they were Germans or the United States. He said, well, if I don't holler, they're going to go on. If they go on, I'm going to die anyway. If they're the Germans, they're going to kill me. So he hollered, help me, and they stopped and said, my goodness, who's hollering? He said, I'm over here. He said, my God, man, how long have you been laying here? He said, well, I've been here a couple of days. They said they were going to come back for me, but they never did. And so he said they picked him up because he couldn't walk, of course. They picked him up, and the two soldiers took their rifles and put him across their saddles and got him up on that, and then they took him behind the lines.
Wow, what a man.
Yeah.
He came here and then he was
In the hospital for several years.
for several years.
Yes, and I can't think of the name of the hospital. I know it's written down in my log somewhere.
Yeah.
And there was a decision, because you got to realize in those days they didn't operate like they do today. And the one young surgeon told him, Nick, don't let them take your leg. And he said, we can work with you. And so he was in therapy and a long time. And then he got better, and then he came back to Cincinnati.
Okay. So he was in the hospital elsewhere?
No, he came right back. Well, I think
Okay.
after they discharged him from the
Yeah,
hospital, he
okay.
came back to Cincinnati.
So here he is, still a young immigrant.
Oh, yes,
Debilitating injury.
right.
You said
He was
couldn't-
only in his 20s.
Yeah, he was old. He couldn't read or write.
Read or write, that's right. He came right from Italy as a young boy, but I'll tell you this. My daddy was a very, very smart man. And in Italy, they taught him a lot about electricity before he came over here. And he was very intelligent. He couldn't read and write, but that didn't mean he wasn't an intelligent man. He just didn't learn the language that way.
Yeah, well, sure. But,
Yeah.
but then he went to work, even though
He
there
worked.
was no other choice, right?
Worked all the time.
What did he do for a living, doll?
Well, he went to work mostly for the city of Cincinnati in one way or another. He started with the general hospital, and he worked and he cleaned doctors' offices. And I often laugh because Red had gone to University Hospital for his training. I said, if my daddy knew that he was staying in one of those rooms that he cleaned, he would love that,
Yeah.
But then he worked for the courthouse, and he had and then he worked for the waterworks. Whatever they could get him to do, because they loved him. He was such a sweetheart,
What kind of guy was he? Like if he was sitting here now, what kind of guy would he be?
Well, he was one of the most charming men that you could ever meet. He was never in a bad mood, even all the things that happened to him. He never was in a bad mood, and he was just a joy to be with. He was always happy, and he was just a sweetheart. People that met him never forgot him. He was just a charmer.
And so tell me how he met your mother.
Well,
And she was from Cincinnati, right?
yeah, she was born and raised here in Cincinnati, and of course it was an Italian neighborhood, and of course, I guess she knew about him, and so he went out with her a couple times, and she was a beautiful young 17, 18-year-old girl, and so they started to go out together. And I remember that in those days you couldn't go out together. You had to have a chaperone, and my grandmother would go out with them. And finally he said to her, you don't have to go with us. He said, I love your daughter, I'm not going to hurt her. So she said, okay, I'll let you just go out by yourself then, And it wasn't long that he proposed to her and they got married.
What was your mother's name?
Angela Daria.
Okay.
Daria.
Hold on 1 second. Let's get her gum. Want your gum?
Gum. Spit out your gum.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay.
Do you need a drink or anything?
You want a drink? You want some water?
Yeah, I could just put it there on the,
Sure.
there it is. Okay, that's great. So they got married and they had 4 children.
Now, what year did they get married?
Oh, now that I don't know, it's all down, but
Roughly,
I'm
you were
not.
born in 27, so probably
Yeah, and
early to mid-20s. Are you the oldest, youngest?
I was the youngest.
Okay.
And my brother, if my brother was alive today, he would be 85 or 95.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the neighborhood you grew up in is now this very trendy,
Yes.
happening place, and for
Oh,
years it
yes.
was bad. But what was it like when you were growing up?
Well, it was just an old German neighborhood,
Yeah.
and all of my friends pretty much were either Italians like me, or they were Germans. But it was a very wonderful German neighborhood, very safe, and everybody was It was just a good neighborhood to grow up in.
Yeah, probably the bakeries were there, the
Yeah.
stores, the bars.
That's what I said. There was a bakery and a Catholic church on every corner
And probably a bar too.
and a bar.
Far away. Yeah. Yeah, no, my dad just grew up right up the hill.
Oh, really?
Mount Adams.
Oh, that's right.
You're close to the same age.
That's what you said, yeah.
So,
Oh, we loved Mount Adams.
Yeah.
We used to climb the steps every yeah.
yeah, I know, when you've talked about that before.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
You and my dad were climbing the steps at one time together.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Just,
Yeah,
Not frightening.
yeah, I know, right.
we never missed climbing the steps.
We could be brothers.
We climbed the steps with my grandmother, and when we get up at the top of the steps, they had the churches that you could go through,
Yeah.
and they had some lunches.
Right.
And then they had the old incline
Yeah.
to take you back downtown, Eccleston. And then when you got down there, we used to say to my grandmother, well, can we go to the show now? And she'd say, but we just did all these prayers now. You know, we said, well, that's not, so she'd take us to the show. But she always felt like she had to say that.
Yeah. My dad loved the incline.
Oh, it was
I have
wonderful.
a picture I'll show you before you leave. That was his favorite thing about.
One of the worst
Cincinnati.
things, that's right.
Yeah, he just
That
loved it.
they fought so hard to keep that.
Yeah.
But City of Cincinnati just wanted to let it go. But to ride up on the incline was
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, I mean, it was a nickel, and it was the only thing, and it's how they got downtown. My dad sold the Time Star.
Yes.
6th and Main, and that's how they would take it.
I know exactly where that is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you grew up, and so talk about you went to Our Lady of Angels for high school.
Yes.
And when did you meet your husband?
Well, when I got out of high school, I graduated, and I wanted to get a job, and they had a job opening at the old Crane Supply
Okay.
up on 8th and Broadway. And I went for an interview, and just filled out, and they called me right away and gave me the job. And that's where I met Ed. He was just got home from the service,
Yeah.
and he was working in Crane. He was working in the plumbing department, and we started to go out. And
What were you doing there at Cranes?
Huh?
What did you do at Cranes?
I was just worked in the office.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was
So,
just office help. And
do you remember your first date?
yes, I do.
Where did you go?
Well, he was a jokester. Ed was, you know.
That explains a lot.
Yeah, he said to me, they were having a big doings. I don't know if it was New Year's Eve or something. And he said, would you like to go with me? And I said, well, yeah, I guess so. It was kind of a dressy thing. And I didn't know to believe him because I thought maybe he was just kidding me. Because you got to realize I was only about 18, 19 years old. And so I said to one of the girls, I said, do you think he's kidding me? Because I don't want to go out and get a pretty dress and then have him stand me up, you know. And they said, oh no, I think he really likes you. And he's, you know, so we went out then, and we went out repeatedly after that.
Yeah. So when did you get married?
In 1948,
Okay.
October 1948.
What church did you get married in?
St. William's up in West 8th
Yeah.
in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah, got married in St. William's.
Is your husband from, was Ed?
No, he was a Covington boy.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, he grew up in Covington.
Yeah.
And I didn't know much about Covington. You know, well, he didn't know much about Cincinnati
Yeah.
either.
Why'd you pick St. Williams? I have family that's been married out of there. Just because there's was it any reason you picked St. Williams to get married?
Well, when we moved from down at the Pendleton area
Yeah.
and all that, my mom and dad bought a home up in Price Hill.
Okay, all right.
And so that was our parish church.
Okay, all right.
And that's where we got married.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had cousins that got married. up there.
Beautiful
It
church.
is a beautiful church.
Gorgeous church, yeah.
So where did you live when you were first married? Did you move to Covington?
Well, when we were first married, we stayed with my mom for a little because you got to realize it was right after the war. You couldn't just go out and get an apartment or appliances for that matter. And so we stayed with my mom for a little bit. And we went to the old Alms and Dupke building
Yeah.
to get they were selling refrigerators. In fact, my grandson Dan, once you know I still have it. It still works like a charm.
Is that right?
Yes,
1948?
yes.
What kind of refrigerator is it?
It was a GE.
You'll work like that.
And he said, please don't give that away. If you ever want to get it, I'll take it. So, didn't you, Dan? Yes, he did.
See, a lot of people don't know the old Onsadecny building was a department store.
Yes,
that was the
beautiful department
Yeah,
store.
yeah.
Oh, we loved that, yeah. But it was, and so we got all of our furniture, and then we had our first apartment on Morris Road over here in Kentucky. And then after that, we moved down to Amsterdam Road. His mother's was a widow by then.
Okay.
And she had a big, beautiful home, and it was too big for her, so she asked us why didn't we come down there to stay with her.
Yeah.
So with intentions of moving on, we stayed there we had all of, I think, 7 kids there
at the house that
on Amsterdam
Yeah.
Road. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Used to.
All right.
yeah.
So how many kids did you have? 8 kids, right?
8 children, yes.
Right.
I have to tell you this, that I lost my first child after 3 months of very bad miscarriage.
Yeah.
And they think it was a boy, but they're not sure. Wasn't, but I would have had 9 kids.
And what were your feelings when that happened? I mean, did you want to have other kids right away, or were you scared
Well,
to have kids? Or?
they don't know why I had the miscarriage.
Yeah.
They don't know why. They don't know I didn't do anything. I've had several people that were afraid they caused it. And I had one sister-in-law who avoided to tell me there was a step. And I missed the step and went straight across it. But I didn't fall, but I, shook up myself.
Yeah.
And she always thought she caused it. And then one of my uncles said he just kind of pulled me down and just teasing with me. And I said, no, you didn't. It was something the Lord wanted. And I don't hold it against anybody. So I would have had another 9th little baby.
Yeah. So Duke was your first, right?
Yes, he was. Mhm.
So how was he?
67.
Okay.
About that, yeah.
Okay. So talk about raising your family. I mean,
Well, I had them very fast, very quick. I had the first 4 in 4 years, less than 4 years. And that was pretty rough, It was a lot of babies quick, And of course, I wasn't used to them.
Yeah.
And then I had 3 in 3 more years. And then I had a break, and then I had Joe, which was the last one after
Yeah.
2 years.
so that's not a real big house. What
No.
was it like growing up? What was it like raising that family? there?
Yeah, that's right. And the thing of it is that we always wanted to get our own little place, but his mother was, alone, and he didn't want to leave his mom. And so we started looking for different places. And she was heartbroken because she thought we were going to take those children away from her. Because she said, if you move, I'll never see them anymore, So we just sort of stopped, and then we took the lot next to us. That's where we put our little house.
Okay.
And that's where I am to this day.
Yeah. What was it like raising all those kids in that house?
Well, actually, we had this big woods behind us.
Yeah.
And it was our condos now. And they would play outside and go up in the woods. And of course, they had each other to play with. So it wasn't like, I didn't know what to do with them and that. And they had each other to entertain each other, But it was hard. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work taking care of those many little kids.
Where did the love of music and the talent for music come from? Because so many kids are.
You know what? I'm really not too sure. I always loved music myself. I am the lover of music in the family. Their father liked 2 songs, and I can't remember who they were. And we used to kid him. If he had anybody at all, it was from me.
Yeah, it had to be. Because, the whole family, I don't know some of them, but the ones I know of your children, they're artistic. Buzz and Rob were very good carpenters, right? And,
Yes.
And work with their hands, and Joe's an excellent writer and musician. Nancy can play music.
Yeah.
Red is an amazing writer, smart, good
Yes.
musician. Where did that come from? Do you have any idea of that, or was just they were raised in this big loving family? I remember when I wrote the obituary about Buzz, and it reminded me about my family. Just this big,
Yeah,
tight knit, never a lot of money.
that's right. Yeah.
Take care of each other. Is that where a lot of that came from?
I think so. When you're thrown together, and of course they didn't have that big of a rooms. They were like 2 or 3 to a room and that. And but I think the closeness of them being in home is why they're close to this day.
Yeah, I mean, they're still incredibly close.
I really do think that. I think because they took care of each other, and I know one day Rob, I think, was late getting home from school, and I said to the kids, "Have you seen Rob?" No. Well, everybody started looking around for Rob. Well, he always came right down the hill from St. Agnes, and so we walked up to school, and he said to the nun, "Is Rob here?" And she said, "No, he did leave." And I said, "Well, he never did come home." And she said, "Well, he was a little late." But she said he was fine, and we sent him home. And I told her, I said, "Don't you ever do that again. If one of my children are ever misbehaving and you want them to stay after school, you make sure that I know they're there, because I worried myself sick wondering what happened to him." She said, "Well, I won't ever do that again," and she didn't.
I bet.
I don't know whether if it's because he wasn't bad anymore. No, I'm sure that wasn't it.
Did the kids pick on Joe, and that's why he is the way he is?
I guess.
Joe told me some stories, like when you would go to Florida.
Okay.
Or vacation, I guess it was Florida, right? And you had the big car, and Joe would sit in the back, and he would have to sit, he would lay where the window was.
That's
But you had
right.
all those kids in one car?
That's right,
Or did you
in
take
one
two
car.
cars? In one car?
In one car. We only had the one car.
How many kids would you take?
Well, there are at least 4 or 5, I'm sure. And my oldest son would lay back by the window.
Yeah.
And then he'd get up and he'd lay across the seat.
Yeah.
Oh, we used to have to get on him every once in a while.
Yeah, I bet you had to get on all of
The
them.
oldest one.
Yeah. Do you look back and just love those days when your kids were little and you were,
I do.
were raising them?
I miss those days.
Yeah.
I miss them to this day. And they're all so close to me and so good to me. And I appreciate that. They always inquire about me, make sure I'm all right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's so bad today. A lot of the young people, they don't realize that they grow up so quick and they're gone.
Yeah.
And sometimes they go in different cities and state, you never see much of them. And fortunately for me, they pretty much stayed in our area.
Yeah. How many grandkids, great-grandkids?
I think I have 7 great-grands.
Yeah.
And I think, what did we count, 17?
I think so.
16.
About 17, 15, 17 grandchildren.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think, you were rich growing up, and you certainly weren't rich the way you were raised.
No,
But that never mattered, did it?
no, it didn't matter.
Why was that? Just because you were just so happy with what you had?
I think so. My mother and dad were very normal people, and they just loved their children to come home on Sunday. And my mom always had a big Sunday dinner that people would die for to go, because she was such a great cook. And I think always being with her and all of us, it was just a continuation of the life I had with her. And it was just a good time.
Yeah.
Never had any problems with them. They were good kids, and I loved every one of them.
It seems like you really admired your mom and dad.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And your mom lived to be how old?
My mom lived to be almost 109, and my daddy died, unfortunately, of Lou Gehrig's disease in 75 or 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then can't do nothing about that.
Yeah.
It's fatal.
Tell me about your husband. What kind of man was he?
Well, Ed was the greatest guy in the world. He was funny. He always had this great sense of humor. He was a good dad. And, he took them wherever. And he always had our vacations together. And we had a great life.
Yeah.
We did. And he was always great with the kids and took them wherever they had to go. He was just an ordinary good guy.
Yeah. Well, you did something right, because you do have a wonderful family. I mean, when I see your family get together, they just have so much fun. They love being with each other.
Yes, they
spend
do.
time with one another.
Yeah.
It really is.
It's a
something
compliment, I guess, to the parents, that the fact that they're all so close together and they
Yeah.
care so much for each other. And I don't know, people have asked me, how did you do that? Because a lot of families, they don't have a good relationship when they get a little bit older. But mine are still as close today as they ever were. And I don't know how, I can't answer that. I don't know. It's because I made them know that I loved them and that to love each other and take care of each other.
Well, it was a lesson that stuck, I'll tell you that.
Thank you.
Someone who's observed and admired your family since I've been in for 30 years.
Thank you.
it's.
Well, they're all pretty special
They
people.
are, yeah.
They really are. Each one are so individual. They all got their own little thing in life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you ever drive around? Do you ever go over to Cincinnati and drive around and think about what it was like growing up there?
Yes, in fact, it wasn't too long ago that Nancy and Joe and Red, I think it was, took us a ride. I told them they wanted to see where I was born and
Yeah.
raised. Well, now a lot of that is gone. The
Okay.
Pendleton area and Liberty is pretty much cut in half
Yeah.
up to Pendleton. And so we came down the street and I think they call it the Shillito Warehouse.
Yeah.
Now it's an art place.
Go there all the time, yeah.
Yeah. So they had a lot of artwork in there.
Yeah.
And of course, I had a really good friend that lived on Dandridge. And when I'd go up to see her, and we'd come down the side of the building, and they had these metal boxes. And I don't know what we thought were in those metal boxes, but we always put our hands in there to see if there was anything left. And they said, "Oh, well, we'll stop the car. I want to do that." And they all put their hands in the metal boxes. And of course, there was nothing in it. I don't know what it was, some sort of event, I guess. But we always had hopes that there was something in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What street did you live on when you were growing up? Do you remember what streets did you live on over there?
On Pendleton,
On Pendleton?
I lived on
Right
Pendleton.
Okay.
very close to Liberty,
Yeah.
up at the top.
Yeah. You know, my dad, I've only been in the cemetery twice. I just can't. It's just, to me, it's just, doesn't work. And my aunts get on me about it sometimes, but you know, there's times when, so I go down to where he worked downtown and drive by the building or,
Oh,
or
yeah.
drive by the house we lived in when I was a
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah.
And I just, that's how so that, you know, it's special to go back and look at those. My wife's father used to spend his summers out in Indiana.
Oh, okay,
At a place in Dearborn County called New Alsace. You know, Alsace-Lorraine, he was German.
okay.
Well, just a few months before he died, he asked me if I'd drive him out there.
Is that
And I took
right?
him out there and he looked, he goes, I played in these fields as a kid. So I bet when you went over there, I bet that just gives you a good memory, especially since Joe was working right there.
Yes, he
in
was.
Pendleton.
Yes, yes, he was. It's a beautiful neighborhood.
Yeah.
Beautiful old German neighborhood. The architecture and the homes were just
yeah.
lovely. And, but they're coming back.
Yeah, oh yeah.
There's a lot more going on there now.
A lot of money going on
And they're building them back up again, which is great. But before we moved up to Price Hill, and my mother and dad bought another home up there, and we had to move away because when the war was going on, we got a lot of people that lived down in the hills, and they
Yeah.
didn't take good care of their apartments,
Yeah.
and so we were kind of happy to move on.
Was that exciting for your parents to move out of downtown
Yeah.
and up to Price Hill? I mean, that
Yeah.
was kind of the dream back then, right?
That's absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah. No, it was their idea to move on up to there, you know. So, and it was beautiful, you know, we loved it.
yeah.
And of course, St. Williams was a great parish, and that's where my grandparents were living. Well, of course, my grandmother died young, but my granddaddy still lived up there on Flower Avenue.
Yeah,
And we get him every Sunday.
yeah.
And he'd come over to my mom's for dinner every Sunday.
You know, all your kids have this great appreciation of family.
I think
You know,
they do.
I know from hanging out with Joe and Nance, and I know how close Dan is to his
Yeah.
mom and dad. I mean, they got that from you, right? From the way you were raised and the environment that you
I
kids
think
were
it has
raised
to
in.
come from the mother.
Yeah.
I think the mother holds the families together. And unless you have any kind of a difficulty with children, you have to address it right away. But our kids all got along so well. I really never had to really do much. People would say to me, what did you do to have your family so close? I said, I can't answer that, except that I wanted them to be together and love each other and
Yeah,
always call each other, and which they do. And it broke our hearts when we lost John.
yeah,
When we lost him, we'll never get over that.
yeah. You know, I remember my mom was diagnosed with cancer and they gave her 5 weeks to live. And it was right around this time of year. I remember it was a day just like this. On a Friday, I was at the paper and I went over to see her. And she used to drink those Wiedemann's, those little, and I took her a 12-pack and I remember just talking about it and I remember asking her, you know, are you proud of me? And I remember, so are you proud of your kids, aren't you?
Isn't that something?
Are you proud of your kids? I bet you
Oh,
are so
very
proud.
proud. Very proud of every one of them. And they gave me no reason not to be anything but proud of them. I'm happy to be with them. I'm just so joyed when they call me and ask me to come. And of course, I never turn them down because they always give me a good meal.
You're right,
I
yeah.
can have to,
They know how to have a good time.
yeah,
Yeah, it can be in an alley.
that's right.
That's why I love them.
They're very normal.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that, but
Well, of course, I guess you have
Take
to,
it in too far.
Right.
yeah, whatever is
down
normal.
to earth.
Down to 8, yeah, that's right.
So, as you're about to turn 90, are you reflecting? Are you looking back on things? Is there anything on your mind, or are you just, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm happy to turn 90, as I think it's an achievement, and I've fortunately been well enough to enjoy it. I haven't had too many big problems of health, and so people say to me, well, you might live as long as your mom, and I said, well, don't lay that on me. I don't know if I can make it to another 19 years. But do I look back on it? Yeah. I wish there was a lot of people that I loved that went way too soon, that I wish I could still be with. And my mother had a wonderful family. She came from 14 children and a lot of uncles and aunts. And they were just like my brothers and sisters. I just enjoyed them so much. I loved them all, you know. And they were just good to me. Every time we'd go over there, it was just big meals and a lot of fun going on.
Yeah.
And I miss them. I miss all of them.
Have you had a good life?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't think I could have had a better life.
Yeah.
The Lord gave me a lot to be happy for, and every day of my life I thank Him for my beautiful family and all that we had. It's just couldn't have gone better. I feel very blessed.
All right, that good?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Why are you crying?
No,
How'd I do?
you did great. You
Okay.
did great. Thank you, thank you, Mama.
I know,
Sorry.
but there were just so many, like she says, everyone has died. Everyone I know has died, you know?
Yeah.
My
Yeah, that's hard for
aunts
me
and
to.
uncles and cousins
yeah.
and
That's the hardest thing about being that age.
Yeah, I'm the last one in my family. I have a couple of cousins, but all my aunts and uncles and
Yeah.
the first line are all gone.
How are you feeling? You seem like you're in good health.
Oh, I feel very good.
Yeah.
I do very well, and they're always bringing me. I have to sometimes make sure watch where I step
Yeah.
and watch to hold on to things, you know. I'm always worried I'll fall.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was very honored you asked me to do this. I hope I did
Thanks,
okay.
Pat. Oh,
Yeah.
no,
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
It's totally great.
Yeah.
What fun.
Yeah. All right. Let's get out of here. It's warm in here. Let's get a drink.
Are you burning